The orchid represents my gender, my race, and the way I'm seen in the West as this delicate flower. I know some Western men have this fantasy of the exotic Asian woman who needs the arms of a big, strong white man to protect them. The truth is, the fragile-looking orchid is a very strong and resilient plant. So when I walk down the street as an Asian woman and I get appreciative looks from men, I feel empowered because I have this energy as an Asian woman.
Zoe just sits with a quiet knowledge that, she's beautiful.
Young and flighty, I think would be the best way to describe her.
And she's just like, vroom,
She's a good-looking girl. What can I say? I'm only a man.
I can't recall an actual moment, like the very first time you picked up a dress and you wore your sister's dress. I didn't have any of that. It was all very much in my childhood, taking a towel and pretending it was a skirt, or taking a bed sheet and making it into some sort of a gown. I do remember when I was growing up, we used to play keeping home, which is to play a housewife. And I would always take on the role of a wife. And it was always about cooking for your husband, looking after your husband, being a good wife. And I've always taken on that role as a child. There are probably more misconceptions, legends, and myths about orchids than there are any other plants, such as the magic and mystery surrounding them, that many experienced gardeners are scared of them. The very word orchid conjures up exoticism, glamour, and sophistication. A reputation that seems to put them beyond the wildest dreams of even the most successful gardeners.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I can see what you
But
mean about form.
This is damaged though,
Oh.
like me.
Oh. So Zoe, you were saying, do you think the orchid is a metaphor for you? So how do you explain that? Could you explain a bit more to me?
Well, I think the orchid is a metaphor for the exotification of a race or a culture which is foreign to someone. And I feel, as Zoe, there is this exotification of myself.
So, do you think you play the submissive butterfly?
When I'm Zoe, I perhaps project a certain idea of the delicate oriental butterfly, because that in itself is quite a powerful tool. I think it's only powerful because I'm playing it from an Asian male perspective.
So
Because an Asian male is seen as something that is lesser, I guess.
So no, but you're more like the bud, and then Zoe is the actual flower.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, that's where...
Or is Zoe the bud and Chowie the flower?
Ah, now that's another way of looking at it. Yeah, I never thought that way. Oh.
Sorry. Sorry, excuse me. Hello?
we'd be in the car. And we would enjoy the attention. I mean, the once or twice we cross-dressed together and he'd be in the car. And, and then this is, right? So he says, when I'm driving as a man, nobody notices me and we goes, chink, But when I'm Zoe, men are honking at me, they're tailing me, they're winking at me, and she's just like, vroom, speeding down the Westway.
Because I'm an Asian man, and the way I get treated when I'm an Asian man is very, very different when I'm an Asian woman, it kind of triggered off my investigation into why that is.
Obviously, it's not just that Zoe dresses. When Zoe dresses, he instinctively or immediately becomes more feminine. So it's like just putting on a blouse, just doing his hair, just putting on makeup, changes her. It transitions him just by going through the transition.
I think other people see him as a woman as easily as I do, because he is so well dressed. It's completely believable. He behaves more demure, more feminine, and I don't think anyone would question it, actually.
I used to be kind of surprised, even from the way our friends engage with Chowie, Zoe, you know. Maybe those two entities are not so far apart on the spectrum. Maybe they're beginning to blend and blur.
I was born in Malaysia in a very small town called Malacca. It was a very idyllic childhood. I came from a swimming family. My dad was a coach and an instructor. We were all state swimmers, and we used to do, 18 to 20 kilometers of training a day. I was quite an effeminate boy, even though I was a sportsman. I knew I was different. I was very brave because the town where I grew up was a very small town, very small-minded town. My dad was fairly well known because of the swimming, but I knew that I was different and I didn't make any allowances. It was very hard for my dad, being a very traditional Chinese man, to have such an overtly feminine son in such a small town. After I finished my GCSEs, my O-levels, my dad said, "What do you want to do?" So I was expected to go down the route of my cousins and my siblings, which was to go and do a professional course. And I said, "No, I don't want to go and do law or engineering. I want to do fashion design." Being a small town boy in a big bad city, I basically never attended any classes. So I spent a term just partying basically and exploring the KL underground scene. That kind of pretty much made up my dad's mind that doing a fashion design course was probably not for me. I think in school when I was growing up, I was quite protected because I was a swimmer, therefore I was the headmaster's pet. Because I used to win a lot of accolades for the school. So I got away with a lot of things. And because I was hanging around with all the other swimmers and the water polo boys who were big and beefy, they were jocks basically, I was very protected. And because I was a sportsman, I think I was able to tell the bullies, do what I do, and then come talk to me. So I think the sporting background gave me a lot of discipline and also gave me an armor, I guess, against the bullying. Not that because I was very mouthy as well. So I think it was quite hard to bully me, really.
Were you ever attacked, Zoe?
Attacked?
Yeah.
By
Had any
men.
violence towards you?
No. You have been chased, though. I remember you told me.
Yeah, that was on Shaftesbury Avenue.
Oh, really?
Of course, I'm wearing a Titian wig, 6-inch heels, an absolutely fabulous designer frock. And a couple of black guys went, "It's a geezer! It's a geezer!" And so there's me mincing in 6-inch heels, and I end up by the Café de Paris. Everyone thinks, "Oh, cabaret! There must be something happening there." And then it sort of changed from 8 people to 25 people.
What, chasing you?
No, just standing around thinking, "Oh, there's some cabaret going on." I'm thinking, this is a weird situation. It could have changed at any 1 second. And, of course, when we were leaving, some guy of about 5'0" put a hamburger in my face, which was not exactly wonderful, especially as I was wearing a belted dress and the onions slipped all the way down to the belt and I'm going, "Oh!" I now put on my hair and I feel, oh, that's better. Now, sugar, I'm just arriving in the building. Ah, yes. Years ago, it would have been, I would say I was a woman trapped in a man's body. But then, as time has gone on, I would say I'm the third sex. Because I'm comfortable with the, I suppose, a female psyche, but in a man's body. So, in other words, it gives me the complete range.
When I was young, I was involved in a kind of a dance troupe, and that's how I first started getting involved in performance and dance and the arts. There was a couple of people there who were my mentors. They were older. One was a fashion designer and the other was a choreographer. And I was very much influenced by that lifestyle of performance, of going on stage, and I loved that feeling, and that was what I wanted to do. So I had some background in that. I was a kid in a candy store when I came to England. You know, it was just past the New Romantics, and there was Boy George, and it was it was exciting. You know, it was going to all these clubs that I had only read about and heard about, and you know, I was just threw myself wholeheartedly into this scene.
Chowie arrived in a silver satin top, a plastic belt, bright patent leather blue shoes, and I think, yeah, satin trousers. He was neon.
I was in the scene, I was having a fabulous time, I was going out to Madame Jojo's, I was going out to all these clubs. So I came to England, got all my qualifications, and Butterfly, which was a play in the West End, was casting for some dancers, and I had, through some contacts, I got to know about it, and I thought I would go for the auditions, and I got it. So I was 19 years old on a West End stage.
The first time I saw Chowie dressed as a woman, he was on stage. He took his clothes off in the show, not every last stitch, but quite a lot. And you could still think it's a woman. I mean, it wasn't a guy at all, and it was completely believable. He auditioned as a woman, got the job as a woman, and had to go into the female changing rooms and do the show like that. And that is, I mean, you know, nobody was disbelieving of it at all.
My idea of drag is really more about a sort of stage drag. That's in my head, that's my idea of drag. I would see Zoe as being more transgender than just a drag or in drag.
Orchids are very skilled in the art of seduction. Their colors, markings, scent, and form have evolved to attract suitable pollinators, invariably of the male sex. Some have such developed powers of mimicry and deceit that they take on the appearance and scent of the female. I was always some female or another. I was the goddess of mercy, I was Catwoman, and I kept creating all these roles.
My name is Ivan Heng. I'm a theatre maker from Singapore. Presently, I'm the founder and the artistic director of Wild Rice, a theatre company. The first time I met Chowie was at the end of a performance of Journey West. We didn't stop talking until 4 a.m. in the morning. And I think that was the beginning of a great friendship because we connected. You know, he's from Malacca and I'm from Singapore. We both moved to England. We both experienced what it was like to live as Asian men and Asian gay men in London.
Occasional Orchid was born out of the frustration. Ivan Heng is my co-writer and my director. We were both Chinese actors living and working in the UK, and we were very, very frustrated by the lack of work and also the kind of roles that were being offered to us, which were all the negative stereotypes. So I kept getting cast as waiters, gangsters,
Chinese takeaway waiters and gangsters and kung fu masters.
triads, all those kind of roles, which was so removed from my experience as a person. And I kind of felt the only way I could get any satisfaction if I wanted to act was to create my own roles or hang around with people where we could create our own roles. There were also all these other things that we wanted to explore, like, how Asian women are seen in the West, and also how we felt as Asian men living in the West. And I guess when I started writing the play with Ivan, a lot of my childhood came into it.
In The Occasional Orchid, we were interested in the idea of the performance of gender, that it is a construct of society, and that, mothers actually sometimes do it to their daughters because it's a man's world and you should behave like a woman, which is profound, as an exploration, because Zoe was a man performing a woman in order to please a man. And the idea of how we sometimes make ourselves smaller than we actually are. There's this wonderful scene called Bonsai. And the whole idea of how we actually train this plant and and twist it and train it to behave in the way that it can be a perfect miniature version of itself. It's just a thing of beauty, but it never achieves its full potential. So that was the idea of how we kind of diminish ourselves in trying to fit and perform a particular stereotype.
Bonsai or Penzai started in China in the 1st century AD. Literally, it means plant in a pot. The spirit of bonsai is to encapsulate in a container a miniaturized form of a full-grown tree. The exotic origins and the intriguing nature of the finished trees have imbued bonsai with an awesome mystique. But contrary to popular belief, training a tree does not require complicated skills. Harmony in a bonsai bush is everything. And to that end, branches are cut off and grafted to new positions. Wires are attached to redirect the angle of growth, and the entire tree is regularly lifted out of its pot and its roots pruned. The object of this exercise is to take a naturally occurring tree, manicure, train, and tame it so that it becomes a miniature representation of itself. Successful bonsai growers say the trees love it really, and they are better cared for than they ever could be in the wild. In the final analysis, bonsai is a negotiation between nature and sculptor, and growers never achieve their aims without the help of the trees.
As somebody who is creative, you deal with your past, you deal with yourself, your identity through your work, and that's what I did. And I've always dealt with gender and sexuality because that is the one thing that has been the most important part of me. I've done lots of other people's work where I've also played transgendered characters.
Gutsy boys.
Yeah, so I think that's absolutely, being something which I'm almost obsessed about.
Being stereotyped.
The research also involved us booking an appointment with a psychiatrist to get Zoe passed for a gender reassignment surgery. Zoe carried a tape recorder and So we had all these questions put to her. So it was like very James Bond incognito. And the questions were like, do you feel like a woman inside? Or when did you start cross-dressing? So on one level, we know that these questions were necessary because, it is about the psychology of, the pre-op transsexual. Yeah. But on another level, I think it just occurred to us that it was also very surface, that it was almost pop psychology, when the experience of the actual person is actually much more profound, deeper. You feel in your soul that you are in a wrong body, not just psychological, physiological, but spiritual.
So, Doctor, I believe my hour has begun. Tell me, what am I? Am I a full-time transvestite or a pre-op transsexual?
I'm Neil Kennedy, and I live in High Wycombe, and I have 4 children and about an unmeasurable amount of grandchildren. What I like about transgender people, it's more of a mix. There is, in many ways, sexually certainly, more going on. A lot more going on. They are different. They are different in the same way that men are different and women are different. They are different, and men, sometimes too different, because some of their issues are hard work. Again, it comes down to talking about the range of people. The person who's comfortable in themselves, of whichever gender, is very easy to get on with. People who are really hung up are less so. There is a tendency to be a lot more hung up people in the transgendered scene than perhaps non-transgendered scene. But some of them have a lot of issues going on. I think Charlie was talking earlier about people who have the op and then regret it. That's a lot to be carrying. As you can't take the thing back.
Critical incidents in my childhood. Well, I did the usual, mother's makeup and dresses, schoolboy crushes, joined the boys' brigade. Do I feel like a woman inside? Well, sometimes.
So do you consider yourself gay?
I'm in a gay relationship, a long-term gay relationship, so I guess yes, I am. But there is also this part of me, which is Zoe, which is very much part of my everyday makeup as well. So yes, I guess I'm gay, but I'm also transgendered. I identify as transgender. And the definition of transgender just means that someone who identifies with a gender other than one that they were born with.
The closest I came to exploring it is when I thought I was going to have a sex change. That was when I'd have to readdress everything and think, well, I've always felt feminine. And everyone said my body language has been feminine, my thoughts have mainly been feminine. And from that aspect, I thought, well, yes, I was definitely a woman. Eventually something comes along and go, oh, actually, maybe not. And it was like being caught in the middle in a way. Because I'm thinking like, yes, I don't mind wearing, I like wearing women's clothes. It wasn't a sexual thing per se. I mean, occasionally there was that, like, ooh, yeah, stockings suspended. But it was not predominantly that. It was like, I'm wearing stockings and suspenders because I feel comfortable in stockings and suspenders, or a dress, or a trouser suit. But it was always that, there was always that element there.
My previous girlfriend, who was a genetic girl, right, had an aunt in Belgium who used to be her uncle. But by the time she did it, she was a very blokey looking bloke, and she turned into a very blokey looking transgender girl. And she can't help that because her gender is not focused around how she looks. It's about how she feels, about how she is, right? So it's unfortunate that she looks like a really solid Belgian truck driver. But now she just looks as a solid Belgian transgendered truck driver, and that's really unfortunate for her.
Where I fall within the gender spectrum, I guess is fluid. At one point of my life, I guess I was perhaps more transsexual, perhaps, because I did go through a stage where I wondered if I was, but I don't have gender dysphoria. I don't wake up feeling like I'm trapped in the wrong body, which a lot of so-called transsexuals do. Those with gender dysphoria, anyway, they feel that they were a mistake of nature and that they were born in the wrong bodies, and that what they see physically and what they feel in their heads is not the same. So I think for them, it's trying to rectify a mistake of nature. I don't have that problem. I feel I'm transgendered, but I'm also very, very comfortable in my duality, if it makes any sense. And I think this can only exist in the world that we live in today, because the whole way the medical profession looks at transgenderism and the way we're exposed to so many things now, that someone like me can exist. And I guess there is a term that's been coined for people who is not so easily defined within the gender spectrum, and they are called gender queers. And I guess that's what I am, a gender queer. Is that what I am? Thank you, Doctor, for your time.
Who do you prefer, being Zoe or Chowie?
Depends on where I am and what I'm doing. I think it's very much about what I'm doing that day.
If I go out with Zoe, I think I'm going out with a woman. There's no second thoughts about that. And if I'm going out with Chowie, I'm going out with a guy. There's no mix-up. And it's not a man dressing up in women's clothes. It's completely a believable... He used the word construct. I don't even see it as that. I think it's just a believable persona, I suppose. Or person, even.
Glamour is, I think, translucent. Glamour is not opaque. Glamour is not a mask. Glamour is an enhancement. And therefore, I think Zoe was an enhancement of Chowie, you see? Just like Ivana was an enhancement of Ivan. So I don't know how successful I was, but Zoe was very successful.
In my early days, when I first started dressing to go out, I was much more self-conscious. And I think because I was much more self-conscious, I think because you project that's the energy you give out, people perhaps treated you a bit differently, or people looked at you a bit more.
Of course, I'd heard of Zoe. I'd seen the wardrobe of Zoe's clothes, but I've never really met Zoe until kind of, I was made to dress up and join them. I cross-dressed for roles like M. Butterfly, professionally, so my makeup was quite theatre, and the two of them were such bitches, and they said like, Les, darling, you want to be more convincing, let's kabuki. So while their makeup was very subtle, still glamorous, but very subtle, mine was a bit more painted face. So, yes, I had to tone it down. And then I got into this very tight black dress and these very high heels. And Chowie was there, and he's just like, basically just put it on. And she was there. And I remember going out to the car, stepping out of Chowie's home, walking up the stairs, and the neighbors were walking by. And Chowie opened the door. And so I said, oh, shall I sit at the back? And she and Jojo said, "Kabit suaranya, kabit suara," which means, soften your voice, clip your voice, make it higher. Just chin sai po la lei. This is like, you're revealing everything, right? Keep up the appearance of being a real woman.
Sawadika. If you are a subservient Thai ladyboy looking for genuine friendship and fun times, then I am the young, rich immigration lawyer you are looking for. Can you talk to each other about boyfriends?
Oh, boyfriends.
I don't have boyfriends, Mister. So what would you call them? You know, I have fuck buddies.
We have people who
We have men that we see for sex, and we
Yes.
are, because at the end of the day,
that's all they really want.
yeah, at the end of the day, we are men. Gender, like sexuality, is very, very fluid. I think at certain times of people's lives, you can be one or the other, depending on what you've been through, the experiences you've had. You know, a lot of guys nowadays with the internet, a lot of straight boys, I think their bi-curiosity is always sparked by accidentally clicking on a she-male porn link, and they go, ooh, that looks quite interesting. Me, ex-army, ex-model, film extra, enjoys musicals, motorcycles and spring rolls. You, delicate, unassertive little butterfly. Come play my solo saxophone.
My sexuality was always a bit on the cusp as I got older. As I started to care less about what people thought, the more I realised there was stuff I could do sexually and in every other way. But it didn't matter if I tried it. And so I did. And then started having relationships. Started having sex with a combination of genders. And it was excellent fun. Otherwise, why would I do it?
For a lot of men, maybe, you know, much more than we actually think, there is this fascination with the phallus. So they want to play with their own, they want to play with someone else's, but because they're not really attracted to another man, a transsexual, a she-male, but a transgender, it kind of, you know, it's the perfect halfway house, isn't it? Because you look like a woman, you got a cock. You're a chick with a dick, you know, so you kind of get the best of both.
I remember to this day, I'm almost the handsomest man I think I've met in my life, apart from my husband. This ship captain came up to me. He was in full uniform, and he was, you know, basically coming on to me quite strongly in the most charming way, wanting to buy us drinks. And I would, you know, very politely say, I'm sorry, I'm with my sisters. I'm sorry, I'm with my girlfriends. I mean, this was my first experience, you know, I don't need that on stage. So it was kind of scary. But he was ever so charming, and, you know, he came up and he grabbed me by the waist, you know, as though, darling, you smell beautiful. And he says, like, you know, come home with me tonight, you know. I'd like to take you home and spend an evening with me, you know. And I said, no. And he said, and then he says to me, you know, I'd love to have your cock in my mouth. And again, that was another moment of insight, right? Because here was this very masculine ship captain wanting to have sex with a chick with a dick.
It's the whole tits and cock thing, really. I mean, that's all it's about. I'm quite clear about it. As far as I'm concerned, if I end up in bed with somebody who has a penis, that makes me bisexual, if you need to label these things. A lot of guys have an issue with that because they think she's got breasts, so it's a girl. And I used to nearly come into fights with them, being brutally honest about the whole thing. I go, but you're bisexual, aren't you? And they go, no, I'm straight. But you're going home with, oh no, really, I just didn't get it. I don't. But that's the thing, if they're in denial, that's fine. It's just that I wasn't.
Some of the guys, they are so filled with desire and so filled with lust before and during the sex act, but the minute they come, they are so overcome with guilt, you will not believe it. You know, it's just suddenly, it's like someone's thrown a bucket of water over them, And you can see that they're just, all these questions come into their heads and they can't even look you in the eye sometimes. You know, it's just this sudden, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? You know, and then all they want to do is just get up. But before that, wow, you know, you've been. So I think, yeah, it's a twilight relationship. One of the things which I always think is very ironic is the fact that the more feminine I look and the more feminine I become, the more masculine the role I'm expected to take in bed.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. Men visit trannies. Men are attracted to trannies because trannies have a dick and trannies can fuck.
One night, I ended up taking this guy home, and I had really long hair, and we were during the throes of passion. He was up above, and I decided to come up as to kiss him. Unfortunately, my hair stayed in the same place, but my head just come out. I was like, oh my God! And then having to maneuver myself back into the hair before he's realised. There are guys who are gorgeous and they fancy you as a woman, but will never fancy you as a guy. And if you break that illusion, they can never see you as a woman again.
It's why a lot of guys who have obviously done it before, but when they are in bed with you, they always say, it's my first time.
I suppose they want to maintain that illusion. They want, we give them an illusion of being a woman, and they want to have this illusion of being, it's my first time. Because it's the first time with that person.
Exactly. First time with me.
First time with her.
A lot of the girls take a big risk. A lot of the girls take bigger risks than that because some of the girls will just maintain that they are a girl until it comes to the actual thing. And that's a big line. I mean, you know, it's a worrying thought that, some guy who genuinely is drunk enough to think he's gone home with a genetic girl and then realises he hasn't, but he's drunk, so it could go either way.
The minute it starts to get very, very serious, a lot of these guys flee because they can't cope with it. However, I think the more successful pairings are usually with guys who are older, who have perhaps had their marriage, a divorce, have kids, and then as you grow older, you care less as well. I think it just comes with age, right? When you are younger, you're much more concerned about what people think of you. You're much more concerned about things.
I mean, girls, a bundle of insecurities as it is. Right? All girls are. That's another thing I learned in my 40s. Right? Is that they all got issues about something. Right? If you're a transgendered girl, it's multiplied 100 times. Right? Does my bum look big in this? It doesn't look big. Does it look like a male's bum in this? Do my legs look good? Do they look like men's legs? It's just all sorts of issues going on. And I could see their point, but some of them are very lucky. And Leia, my ex-girlfriend, was very lucky. She was transitioned into a good-looking woman.
There are some pre-ops who become post-ops who find it very hard. They believe that it's going to be the golden chalice, and once they've actually changed, their life is going to be all sort of like roses and wonder again. But unfortunately, they'll still have the same crap, but in a different body. And then, of course, they may have even more pressure because if they're ever sussed, it's like, that is a man. So they're having even more crap dumped on them.
My best friend, who's transgendered, was living with this guy for 5 years, bought a house together, very, very happy. And then he turned around and gave her the classic line, which was, I want kids. And everything fell apart. They had to sell the house. It was a divorce. It was moving home. It was all the worst things are all happening at the same time, and that was very, very difficult for her. That's why I think a lot of transgendered people sometimes get very, very cynical. A lot of the girls go into sex work, because you just can't. Because the men basically just use you for sex. Guess what arrived in the post today? Yours sincerely, Su Lin. Hoping to hear from you soon, Michiko.
Love and kisses. Tub Tim. The thing about orchid fanciers is, once they've successfully cultivated their first, they'll want a whole greenhouse full. The East has always been seen as something that is feminine, mystical, kind of the inscrutable, the unknown, and the West has always been seen as very masculine, very powerful, and I think there's always this urge or this need for the West to colonize the East because the woman needs to be protected, really, doesn't it? But the East is now completely different. I mean, we know that the East is a very, very much economic powerhouse. So the dynamic has changed. There was once an ugly farmer, so ugly that no one would marry him. He looked far and wide for a wife, but no one would marry him. He finally went to see a bomo, a Malay witch doctor, and for a fee, he was told the secret of Pontianak. Pontianak, a wicked, terrifying vampire who disguises herself as a beautiful woman. She would entice young men, and once under her spell, suck the lifeblood out of them. One night, he stitched one end of a black thread into the heart of a banana flower, and he tied the other end to his little finger. And sure enough, at the stroke of midnight, Pontianak appeared in a mirror before him. She had long teeth and blood dripping from her lips. Quick as a flash, before she could sink her fangs into his neck, he smashed the mirror and drove a 9-inch nail of solid gold into the crown of her head. And just as the bomo had said, she became the image of his perfect wife.
Although I consider myself bisexual, to me still I acknowledge that there has to be elements of femininity. Not huge amounts. I mean, it basically has to be a really, really girly guy or a transgendered person of some sort. It doesn't necessarily have to have breasts or anything. Once it gets that far, then the whole sex thing takes over. But the initial attraction has to be feminine on some level.
The gay scene is very much geared towards the idea of masculinity. So a lot of guys are attracted to strong, hairy, large in stature men, of which a lot of Asian guys, they don't kind of fit this stereotype. If you are a very pretty young Asian boy and you find it hard to fit into the mainstream gay scene, nowadays a lot of them are electing to throw on a frock, because suddenly, as a lady boy, you attract a different kind of man. You attract the kind of man who in the mainstream gay scene might not necessarily be attracted to you. I can only speak from my experience. Okay, so my experience as an Asian man who perhaps is not very beefed up, who's quite feminine, you get treated as someone who is kind of weak and powerless, maybe. But if I become this woman and I take this weakness and I use it to my advantage,
it becomes something which I can take on to become something that is positive.
I think when Zoe says she plays that stereotype, she's doing it playfully. I think, she does it with a complete understanding of playing the game.
You've obviously known Charlie a long time. Do you think it's changed at all?
Yeah, in that people do, over that time. He's gone from a teenager to an older person than a teenager. I dare not say anything else. And, matured and gone through a hell of a lot in his life. And the death of his father and all that sort of thing. And it changes you. And, yeah, he's more confident, more mature now.
When I arrive and knock on the door, I'm never surprised anymore. It's never a remarkable. It's no longer a remarkable phenomenon who opens the door. It's like, open the door, oh, hi, darling. And it's either Chowie or Zoe, and it makes no difference because it's one and the same person.
The ugly farmer and his wife lived together. They were beatifically, blissfully happy. So happy that he forgot who she was. One night, as she was sitting at a dressing table, brushing her long, black, silky hair, the farmer walked in. He basked at the glory of his perfect woman, who was beautiful, faithful, and true. And because he too was so beatifically, blissfully happy, he forgot who she was. Zoe used to be a character that came out for performance, but because now it's become very much part of Chowie's social life, I'm now just who I am. Like when I go out these days to any events, any functions, more often than not, it's Zoe. Because Zoe is more part of my life, does that then make Zoe Chowie? I think it's just very much the same person. He took the hairbrush from her hand, and there, nestled in the crown of her head, was a little golden tip. Without thinking, the farmer pulled out the 9-inch nail of solid gold from the crown of her head, and Pontiana transformed from his beautiful, perfect, obedient wife into who she really was. The gay cause has moved so forward now that, I think it's much easier for a gay person to come out, because there are lots more role models. But if you are transgendered, I think we are probably where the gay cause was 20 years ago. I think eventually times will change. I think it's just exposure, it's just education. I think people just know more about. And once you're exposed to it and it becomes less frightening, then it just becomes the norm.
I saw something on Facebook recently, I can't remember the details, but I always love it because it was just a list of things you should do. And it says basically, make a friend of somebody whose first language isn't English. Make a friend with somebody who's gay. Make a friend, because these are the things that mature you and make you into a better human being. Absolutely on the button. The more diverse people you have around you, the more diverse your life, the better person you will be, because you become more understanding and accepting and less condemning of people's foibles.
My dad was very, very proud of me, and I remember him, we were driving in a car, and he said, when I sent you to England, I knew there was a high chance you were never coming back. And I knew deep down inside that life would be better for you in the West. So, I think subconsciously or perhaps consciously, he knew that for someone like me, the West, the big bad West, was probably better than the East. So,
In terms of your sexuality?
In terms of my sexuality, yeah.
Artists make art in order to understand the world that they live in and to understand themselves. And I think one of my favorite quotes is what George Bernard Shaw says. He says, a man who writes about himself and his own time is the only man who writes about all men and all time. I think in writing this play that was so deeply personal, Chowie put a lot of himself into the creation of Zoe. So Zoe is a facet of this amazing human being called Chowie Liao. Yeah.
The truth is, the family Orchidaceae is one of the largest groups of flowering plants, occurring naturally in almost every geographical region of the world. In fact, some species thrive in places which are covered in snow and ice for a large part of the year. Others face such inhospitable conditions that they spend the whole of their lives underground, propagating, flowering, and finally dying in the dark.